setup first. Gonna take the machine out of the box, open the case. You got wheels on one side. So easiest way to do it on your own, make sure that's kind of folded down so that you can tilt it up. Bring it out, and then same thing, you got wheels on one side and handles. So when you put it back away, you want to make sure you match those up too. But after that, lay it down, just be careful. Obviously we don't want to like toss this piece of equipment around. And I usually lay this back down, kind of use it to set up the tablet and stuff in behind whatever group's going. You got clips on either side. And then for storage for the wires that come with it, we wrap them up, store them actually just down in the machine itself. So power cord and the safety mechanism, and then the actual line and the attachment for the belt. So with this one, there's a little kind of attachment port on this side. You gotta make sure you screw it in. And then if the button gets hit at all, you can see this kind of green line underneath it. Push down, that's the like emergency stop trigger. So if somebody accidentally clicked it, I'm just going to show you, it'll flash red when the machine's turned on, otherwise you'll see a green light. But another way you can check, plug the cord into the side and then plug it in. And you get a power switch on the side. So when you turn it on, it turns green. You can see because I triggered it, it's red. You gotta push down, twist, and then it'll pop back up. So just something to look at, keep in mind. The actual placement of the device, once we get it going, I'll show you, but there is a safety mechanism so that the cord doesn't slam back in if somebody were to just let it go back to the machine. So you need to give a certain amount of distance from the start line. We usually say about 2 meters. So if I set the machine right here, our start line is going to be out front, and that gives enough distance where it pulls out. And that braking mechanism, what it does, and we'll go over it, but it slows it down coming back in, but it also means it's added resistance going back out, so just enough room to clear that. Doesn't matter how far past it, but you have to make sure you're far enough that you're not still kind of in that range for the start of kind of different sizes, and make sure you have some of those laid out. But that's the setup of the actual device itself. Next, to pair the Surface Pro to it. Like I said earlier, we have the 3 Surface Pros. Any of them should work with any of the 1080s. You just have to make sure you have the right number. So this one is going to be our number 2, our very official taping system. We also didn't necessarily do the best way because 0 tape pieces patches with 1 piece of tape matches with 2 pieces of tape matches with the third one. So what you do, the way to pair it through Bluetooth, you got to hold down on this shortcut right here, and it'll pop up, and then you want to do connect using. The arrow will come out to the side, access point. It'll search for the device. If you only have one on, oh, so I picked the wrong one. If you only have one on, it'll give you that error message. When you have the right one, you connect. It's if we have all 3 set up, obviously, that you want to make sure you have them matched up before you go into it. So we're now connected. You can open up the app. One of the other ways you can tell if you're connected, or if you forget to do Bluetooth and you open the app, it'll let you into it, but you won't see the numbers along the bottom, and these are the controls for changing the resistance. But if it's not connected, the rest of this will still show up. That'll just be blank. This is kind of the initial interface that you see. So on the side, clients, you can pull up, it'll pull up all the different teams that we have listed, different groups, and to put somebody in line to do some of the testing, we're gonna go Old Duval. You just click on their name, you can exit out, and now they're in line to perform whatever the test is. So with that, when you click on it, it'll pull up different testing sessions. So we have new or quick are two ways to add. Quick just defaults to running, so it'll import a new session and have running as the option. New pulls up a new session, but you have to add a different exercise. So that's where I was saying we do it for some rotational stuff, some jump work, things like that. We have side shuffles all listed down in there, but you scroll through and you can still select running, just a little bit more of a process to go that route. Now it's ready to go with that first running session. So you would click view, goes into it, and this is going to be the screen where you actually kind of run people from. So we'll do that in a second, but first, kind of going over the bottom. This is our resistance, and it's both the weight for resistance moving away from the machine and or assistance coming back towards it, and you can set them independently. So first thing about the machine, well, like I said, you can adjust and have more load coming back in than going out if you want to set it that way. But the load itself has two options. You can do constant, so it keeps 4 kilograms the whole time, or variable. And the way this works is you have a starting resistance and then a certain threshold you're trying to get to, which is the speed that you'd set over here for the third number, and a resistance at that speed. So in this case, if you're not moving, the resistance is going to be really heavy at 14 kilograms. By the time you hit 6 meters per second, it will have decreased consistently to 4 kilograms. So over the course of you accelerating, it's at that same pace, decreasing resistance. So kind of a cool feature that this allows you to do. Same thing if you think about it, flipping it around to assisted sprints, right? It can pull you out of the blocks really fast and then lighten up as you start to pick up speed. But we're gonna start on constant for right now. Another cool feature about this, it's gonna default to isotonic, and that's what we'll keep it on for most of our sprint testing. But you have two other functions in here, normal and no fly weight. And so isotonic is just smooth, consistent resistance, meaning no inertia whatsoever. So it'll calculate out inertia. Normal means it's using the motor and a friction coefficient to simulate inertia, just like you were pulling a sled. So as you start, it's going to be a little bit harder or heavier, and then as you pick up speed, it will obviously lighten slightly. But then also as you decelerate, right, the sled has its own momentum, and so it'll keep going, so you get some slack in the line. The last one, calling no fly weight, is why this is kind of crazy, but it can separate out acceleration inertia and deceleration inertia, and so it will keep that initial inertia, so you get the little bit of added resistance from the initial movement as you accelerate, but it'll remove the deceleration component, so you won't get any slack in the line. So when we do like throws, so that you have that initial feeling of over inertia to overcome, we'll use that, but that way it doesn't go slack and then kind of whip back on you at the end. And so we can look at that if you guys want to. The other thing about this is where you calibrate if you want to extend the cord at all to give any room. And one of the reasons is obviously that we'll be pulling on somebody as they go to detach it from their belt. But for sprinting, we stick mainly with isotonic. And then these are speed thresholds. So you have the resisted speed threshold. That means it won't allow the machine to go any faster. That we're always, for sprinting, going to keep the highest level. The resisted setting's really more for another product they have, but nobody's going to be running over 14 meters per second. What would happen is if you set that down to 5 meters per second, is somebody would feel 3 kilograms of resistance until they hit 5 meters per second, and then the machine won't let it go any faster than 5 meters per second. So they'll keep moving, but it'll actually drag the machine, and that's where they call it a boat anchor. So that's why we would always keep this one up all the way. But same idea coming back for the assisted side. This one, a lot of times I'll set to like 1.2, 1.3. That's kind of a normal walking pace. And what's nice about that is you can go really heavy and have people work going out, but it sets that threshold coming back where it'll stop pulling them at a certain speed. So if you go out against 30 kilograms of resistance, you're not having to fight that pulling you back all the way. It just kind of lightens up when you hit that threshold, and so you don't feel like you're being ripped back to the machine. So you click new. These are the different options for starting. So this is just for sprint. But we have manual start, so I can get you to set up, tell you go, hit start and hit stop, and it'll record everything in between. We have a set distance, so we can get you set up and have a starting point a certain distance away from the machine where it'll start recording, and also a finish line away from the machine. We have a certain time threshold that we want it to record for. The one we use the most is the auto distance. And so what this is it'll let you start from anywhere, but you get the athletes to set up. And then once they're still, you can hit begin, and it goes off of a movement threshold for them. So once they hit a certain point of movement, it starts recording, and it'll go for whatever distance you end up setting past that initial movement. So for us, that way we don't have to have them start on the exact same spot every time. They come out and get set, and even if it's a slight difference, it's not going to mess up the reading, but it'll record 20 meters from that point. So the biggest thing with this one is if you get them in place, have them set, hit begin, and they kind of move, it will start picking up early. Even though it'll get the full distance, still, it'll throw off a lot of the averages and like the time of the sprint. So that's the biggest thing with that one. So get set. On you. On you. On you. The only other things you need, something to attach it to. So in this case, we're going to use the Versa. When we bring it outside, a lot of times we bring one of the white plyo boxes with us. And then the pulley, which you'll actually wrap it around so that it locks in. And then attach the cord that's directly attached to the 1080 back here. And you loop the pulley around the cord, and then the pulley becomes what you're actually going to attach to the athlete, so you can pull that back out to give enough distance, set the new position, and now this becomes a starting point, and they hook here, so as they go, that cord doubles over, but they're getting added resistance, and that lets you kind of bump up the resistance with it. All right, so once we've gone through the 4 different resistances, you back out of the testing screen, and you just have to make sure that you have the right session selected. But in this case, on this side, you have the load velocity profile right here. Select it, and then you'll pick, it will average. So if you do multiple runs at the same weight, it will average your results for those. So if you want a particular run, you have to go back and delete anything at the same weight. But you just select all 4. Once you get to 3, it'll actually pull up the calculation, but this will give you the equation. So the slope, constant, and then the y-intercept is what we would say your theoretical max velocity is. So this drew 8.23 if you had no load. And then the theoretical max load, it lists down at the bottom so that you don't have to calculate it out. But 74.5 kilograms would be essentially, think of it as the lightest weight where you wouldn't move. But it's also just based off of the trajectory as far as how much you decrease with weight. So really, one of the things we look at and are interested in is the slope itself. And that's kind of what we talk about as far as load velocity profile is how steep is that? you're somebody who's not really fast to begin with but strong, obviously going to be a flatter slope. If you're somebody who's really fast but loses speed significantly with weight increase, it's going to be steep, and that's how we might bucket you guys as far as like velocity work or force work, if that makes sense. So that is Drew's